Thank you.
Yeah. So now may I request our next speaker for this session, Madam Miss Ekta Kumar, Independent ESG and CSR Advisor, to please present her perspective.
Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Thank you for having me here. This is actually a very rigorous follow-up by Dr. S.K. Gupta ji. So thank you, Gupta ji, for that follow-up and having me here. I've been around for just today and I've learned so much in the process, and I hope that after my session you also know something about what happens in the corporate world in terms of ESG. So broadly, just to begin with a little bit of a background about myself and Sustainable Edge, the organization that I've founded. I've spent 23 years in the corporate world. My last job till 2022 was with Samsung. I was the ESG head for India and Southwest Asia. Prior to that, I was with Shell, Airtel, Deloitte, ICICI Bank. I've tried to cover as many industries as I could in my corporate career. Today, as Sustainable Edge, the intent is really, to bring up more awareness about what is ESG and CSR. So there is a lot of capacity building work that I do, and also to help organizations drive their ESG compliances. And India, especially as we know that BRSR reporting is becoming very critical, so that is one space that I work a lot in. Moving on, what I'm going to talk about in today's session is, as the technical session says, we talk about green entrepreneurship and we look at the local linkages to it, as in how is the entire global world and the local world linked to green entrepreneurship? What's the interconnectedness over there? So, beginning with what is green entrepreneurship, I think it needs no introduction. You are in a global summit that is talking about, how to go green, how to, kind of develop green entrepreneurship. Just kind of this picture might help you understand that today we all look at every aspect of life in terms of how it can be more sustainable. There was a time when corporates used to get investors by saying that I make the most profits, I make the best product, I do this, I do that. Today, that story has changed quite a bit. The story today is I am profitable, I make the best products, and I am sustainable. If you're not able to say that I am sustainable, you won't get investors, you won't get employees, you won't get customers. So the whole paradigm is shifting today. So green entrepreneurship is basically about making more sustainable products as well as having more sustainable businesses. Some examples that we can look at, like for example, Tesla is a very good example of being an absolutely sustainable organization. As in, they are one of those organizations that make more money by selling carbon credits than actually by selling cars, right? So they are into a product line that helps them share with the world that they don't have a carbon footprint at all, and they are helping, arrest the climate crisis that we are all facing right now. Google similarly invests a lot in technology. They have some of the highest number of investments in renewable energy. Last that I read was in 2022, they had already invested $3.5 billion into renewable energy. All their data centers are powered by renewable energy, and wherever they can't be, they try and do offsets. That means they power something else with renewable energy so that whatever they are not consuming, somebody else is, and they take the credit for that. I'm talking of some smaller organizations also over here so that we understand that green entrepreneurship is a wide spectrum, not just the big players. So, like Chakra Innovation, I had the pleasure of meeting the team. They came and made a presentation to me when I was working with Shell. And at that point of time, they shared their product, which was basically capturing the carbon that comes out of diesel gensets via a small gadget. And whatever carbon gets collected then gets used as ink. So the ink that we write with, that black soot is used to kind of write. It is refilled in pens. So they are really bringing to life the concept of circularity, that nothing is wasted. Whatever is waste is again leveraged as ink in the pens. And last but not the least, Huskpar, again had the pleasure of working with them. So they work with, Husk, which is basically that comes out from paddy fields from rice. They use that to make gas for areas where you do not have electricity. So the gas makes electricity then. So wherever we have villages which are still not connected with the main grids, husk power is the way to get energy or electricity in those villages. Again, a very sustainable and a green initiative. Moving on, let's talk about the global dimensions of ESG. So we've seen what a green company could look like. Now let's talk about what ESG has been, or what has the journey of ESG reporting been in India. So it started as long back as 2009, although it's becoming a buzzword more now. And then in 2012, actually, SEBI mandated that you have to do the BRR reporting. And from BRR reporting, it's been a journey till 2021 with 100 companies, and then 500 companies, and 1,000 companies, and so on and so forth. But in 2021, it got rebranded as BRSR. And today, as we all know, is business responsibility and sustainability reporting, that the top 1,000 companies as per market capitalization are supposed to do it. In fact, as I speak today, 2 days back, SEBI came out with another BRSR format called BRSR Core. So this is BRSR Comprehensive that came out in 2021, which was approximately 140 parameters that the companies had to comply to. Now they've come up with an even shorter list of 49 parameters 2 days back, saying that we'd like companies to start following this BRSR code and comply to these small 49 parameters, but makes it more comparable across companies as to how they are doing in terms of their ESG practices. So how is BRSR aligned to the ESG pillars? Pretty straightforward, as in they've really nailed it. They've got 9 principles, but they talk to all of the pillars. From an environment perspective, they talk to it, talked about what is your energy strategy, how much is your greenhouse gas emissions, what is your renewable energy strategy, solid waste management, water consumption, reduce, recycle, all these practices, the 3R as we know them, sustainable sourcing, etc. From a social perspective, it is generally, all stakeholders that you can think of. So first is the employees. It is about how are you taking care of well-being of your own employees. Then second is the community, where you have your plants, your factories. How are you taking care of them? What are you doing for them to have the social license to operate? And last but not the least, also looking at human rights and other aspects. The last one is, of course, governance. That is not new to us, and I'm sure as cost and management accountants, that's something that you're very aware of. So I will kind of give that a skip. Now, the ESG compliance, so the BRSR, advantage, there are way too many of them. As in, I'm going to go through them very briefly. We are all aware that, being sustainable could mean a little bit of a cost initially, but in the long run, it pays off. And in fact, there is data around this increased value creation. MSSCI has shown that, over a 12-year period, organizations that have been more sustainable have created more value than those that haven't been sustainable. Likewise, access to markets and increased market share. I shared that initially as well. Employees don't want to join you if you are not sustainable. Investors don't want to invest in you if you're not sustainable. So it's kind of become the thing that you have to do. Moving on, increased access to capital. Obviously, again, as I said, that when we're looking at green finance, there was a session before this that spoke about green bonds, green financing, RBI's new regulations. So that is exactly what the benefit of being more sustainable is, that you get access to these funds. Reduced financial risks. So I was incidentally very taken aback by this particular aspect when I was working in 2019 with, again, Shell, which is an oil and gas company. World Bank said that they will stop investing in oil and gas sector upstream of that sector. That means no more oil exploration and refining. So that means that the organizations that, like World Bank, that are going to give you funds are getting so stringent about it. There is a wake-up call over there to say that, okay, let's look at other sources of energy like renewable energy rather than looking at oil as a source of energy. Then obtaining social license to operate, it's a no-brainer. It is not the government that gives you a license to operate. Any day the community around you can come and do a strike outside your premises if you're not socially responsible. So it's very, very important to be socially responsible in your practices. And last but not the least, attracting and retaining talent. As an employee, especially the Gen Z, the millennials are extremely conscious about sustainability, and you can only retain them if you're a sustainable organization. Moving on to what is VRSR, I'm going a little bit of detail into this because this is the ESG compliance for India, and this is how we as an organization in India will grow in our ESG responsibilities and in our ESG compliance. So this is the format. It's got a section A, B, and C. Section A is a no-brainer, which is, size of your company, turnover, products, employees, etc. Section B is what are the management processes over there. And last but not the least, section C, which has the 140 parameters in it, talks of two indicators. To begin with, they're saying let's look at essential indicators. That means a must have. That means your employees must have an insurance. Your employees must, there must be a code of conduct, a human rights policy, etc. But then there are certain others which they have put in as leadership indicators, which says that you grow into it. If you don't have it today, then also it's okay, but at least please ensure that as an organization, you're working towards it. These are the 9 principles that they talk about. I'm not going to go through all 9 of them, but if you give a quick glance to it, you will understand that it talks about, human rights, it talks about well-being of employees, it talks about being responsive towards all stakeholders, it talks about being responsible towards the environment, equitable development. So they've covered all bases through these 9 principles. Now let's talk about the interconnectedness, as in why as India should we really bother, right? As in there are many conversations also that, the global south, the developing nations still have a lot more to do than to start worrying about sustainability, right? We've got to get a lot of things, to get our house in order. So this should not perhaps be a priority. But it's an interconnected world, right? We don't live in isolation. We're working with some of the global players. And hence, it's very important to understand that what you do at a local level at the end of the day becomes like a Southeast Asia or a Asia thing, and then it becomes a global thing, and it's all very interconnected. So I, for example, was advising an organization recently on their ESG journey, and there were many gaps. There was a lot that they needed to do, but they're very excited about it. They were like, yeah, please tell us what more, we'll do it. And I kept stating it upfront that while I see and sense the excitement, I do hope that this is going to be a lot of cost for all of you, as in there's a lot of investment of time, effort, and money that's going to go into, being more sustainable. They said that's not a problem. We have a customer in Europe who will give us 3% extra if we do this well. So that just goes to show that everybody has figured it out that they're a part of the global economy, and they need to do it well to get more money from their customers as well, right? So I'm just going to quickly conclude by sharing that how does some of our ESG frameworks compare to the international ESG frameworks. This is a quick comparison with the GRI standards, and if you'd like to see more, I've given the link down below for you to go and evaluate it better. But as you can see, there is a mapping of everything that the global world has already been following in our BRSR reporting as well. Likewise, there's an interconnectedness of our BRSR with the SDGs as well, which is the Sustainable Development Goals. So the business responsibility and sustainability report has a complete overlap with the SDGs as well. I think to conclude, I'll just say, as in bringing us back to the whole thing, that it's all an interconnected world. The apparel industry is perhaps the best example over here. As you might be aware, India, China, Bangladesh are some of the hubs for the European companies for sourcing both their cloth as well as the ready-made apparels. And the entire apparel industry is falling in line. First, it was the human rights revolution where child labor, etc., got restricted because everybody came to know about it, that Marks and Spencer and H&M and all these guys were getting things made and child labor was being put into it. Now it's becoming about sustainable and ethical practices, and everybody has got their eyes on this industry, and this industry is really shaped up so well over the past couple of years, where they've got these sustainability practices going on. They are very, very ethical in their practices, and I think that just shows that it's not a choice anymore. If you want a buyer who's outside of India, you will have to fall in line with ESG practices, become more sustainable, and that's the way forward for all of us. That is all that I have for today. Thank you so much for being such a great audience.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insights with us.